And welcome everybody to Yard Prep here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I am your host, Louis Sung, and we will see if anybody else joins up for the rest of this show. So if not, we'll just do a very quick one. The Miami Dolphins are going to be facing off against the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. Obviously, this is the return of Tua Tagovailoa, probably the biggest storyline of the day. Second biggest storyline of the day is probably the return of Brian Flores to Miami ever since the controversial firing and then suing and then all the things that happened as a result of all that. So is this the revenge of Tua Tagovailoa for everything that went down in the previous season? We shall see what happens. But before we get too far into that, I'm going to go ahead and plug our sponsor. As always, it is prizepicks.com. That is a revolutionary fantasy platform where you pick up to 5 different players across professional sports leagues, whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, or you can choose one of each. It's up to you to decide. You choose the over or the under on those individual players' fantasy projections. You can choose individual stats, like whether or not Tua is going to throw over 200 yards, or the classic fantasy point projections. They will even send you some freebie picks to take advantage of, and that means that all you have to do is just pick the freebie one, and you have an excellent chance at winning. Offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up. I actually helped out a friend of mine not that long ago. So use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up using that promo code. Again, that is 5, FIVE, at prizepicks.com. Go ahead and jump in there right now because there's some really good picks that you to choose from. So now, with all that said and done, here's the main thing that we're going to have to watch out for as time goes on. And by the way, Dolphin984, thank you very much. Dolphins win their next 5. We can only hope. I mean, the schedule with Tua Tagovailoa, if Tua is back, the schedule suddenly becomes a lot easier to swallow than with Teddy Bridgewater or even Skylar Thompson. And I'll give Skylar Thompson credit. He was doing a pretty darn good job against the Vikings before everything went sour on him. So with any luck, we will be able to get back on track against the Steelers. I suspect that with the bringing on of Kenny Pickett, the rookie quarterback, I think the Dolphins might actually have an opportunity here to use some of those cover zero looks, see if they can kind of confuse him a little bit. I'm sure Brian Flores has already briefed him on exactly what it is to expect from Josh Boyer. He's basically going to say, watch out for this, watch out for Brandon Jones off the edge, watch out for corner blitzes, watch out for stunts from the likes of Jerome Baker. All that stuff is going to be part of it. I'm sure that Kenny Pickett is going to be prepared, but obviously it's a lot easier to have it in the classroom and have it on a piece of paper than it is to actually face it. So we will see what happens with Kenny Pickett in this game. So now, obviously, let's just get right into it. Andy Romero, the next 11. By the way, if anybody wants to go ahead and put in a super chat, that does help support the show. So feel free to do so. I'll automatically read your comment. And this is something that I would like to do. Like, remember, guys, all this stuff that we are doing for you, we don't have a paywall. We don't have any of that stuff. Anything that we do here is strictly based on you guys. And if you help us out, that is fantastic. And we will say thank you for every single donation that is made for us so we can keep doing what we do here. So obviously, Tua Tagovailoa. This is the big storyline, right? This is the thing that we're going to have to be keeping an eye on as time goes on throughout this game. We are going to be, I suspect, and many of us are going to be holding our breaths, watching to see what happens, because if Tua Tagovailoa hits the ground, we're going to be wondering, is he getting back up? Are people going to be wondering if he has a concussion, if he gets up a little slowly? What kind of an injury could he possibly be facing now? And of course, the national media, because this is Sunday Night Football. This is prime time. Everybody's going to be watching this game now. And so everybody's going to be watching with bated breath to see if they can prove once and for all that the Miami Dolphins were negligent in their treatment of their quarterback. Can we finally say once and for all that the Dolphins should have told Tua that he's done for the rest of the year, that he should retire, and blah, 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 blah. Let me tell you something. There's a lot hanging on this game. There is a lot hanging on this game. Obviously, 3-4 or 4-3 hangs in the balance. We want the Miami Dolphins to get back on track, not continue to slide away. The Brian Flores angle, obviously, we all want to get one up on the guy that essentially was responsible for unraveling the awfulness that was going on behind the scenes. Because if it weren't for Brian Flores, nobody would have known if Stephen Ross had tampered or not. So let's be honest about that for just one moment. Maybe somebody else would have snitched on him, but in the end, Flores is the one that put the microscope on the Dolphins in the first place. And I do see some more people. Brian Myers, I think that Xavier Howard and Teron Armstead will be playing? I personally believe that they will. Obviously, with the way that Mike McDaniel does things. Hey, Cap for life. Nice to see you as always. I honestly, with the way that Mike McDaniel handles these injury things, it's always going to be like a day-to-day thing. We can only hope that Xavier Howard is playing. I personally think he will. Because if he was able to play last week and he did a fairly decent job, I think that we can go ahead and have that into consideration. So we can go ahead and use that. Also, Teron Armstead, I think he's going to play too, because I think he really doesn't want to stay out with a toe injury. Granted, he said that it's unique and that it's kind of an outlier for him, because it's not something that is normally is a norm when it comes to foot injuries in the NFL. So I think he's going to go ahead and keep trying. And Cap, I hope that because last week it's very strange, because I, and I'm sure everybody else in the world, was extremely worried that Kirk Cousins was absolutely going to abuse Noah Igbinoghene. But it seems that maybe there is something there after all. Maybe he's an extremely late bloomer at cornerback. One can only hope that is the case. I'm still skeptical, because I've seen enough of Igbinoghene to think, okay, this guy just doesn't have it. Maybe Sam Madison hasn't given up on him. Maybe Patrick Surtain hasn't given up on him. Maybe they're finally going to at least make him serviceable. At this point, I would say that just serviceable would be appreciated out of Noah Igbinoghene, because as much as I really, really, really don't want him to be the last resort at the end of the day, I really don't want Noah Igbinoghene to be the difference between winning and losing tonight. So now with Tua Tagovailoa back, so all of a sudden now the offense looks like it might be able to function a little bit, especially if Teron Armstead plays, because that means that basically the core of the offensive line is back. If Brandon Shell is decent at right tackle, that would be fantastic. Teron Armstead being at left tackle and Connor Williams at center, with those two guys, and Robert Hunt at right guard. Now that just leaves Liam Eichenberg as the real, I guess you could say, the real main weak link in the chain, because Brandon Shell has not looked terrible. He's not looked good, but he hasn't looked terrible. So average, I guess, is what we can hope for from Brandon Shell. And with any luck, Tua is going to be able to get back into it, get back to form. He doesn't seem to be having any issues. He's gone to several independent doctors, completely unrelated to the team, and everybody's cleared him. So for everybody to continue to talk about how he has a concussion and he shouldn't come back, and other players have come back from different concussions, obviously not as optically bad as the one that Tua had, but it seems to me that at this point they just kind of want Tua to never come back. And we can argue about the intentions behind those reasons. Like, why do you never want him to come back? Is it because you honestly just care about this kid so much? Well, does that mean that you don't care about the other kids that have had concussions? Something to think about. I'm pretty sure it was wasn't it one of the New Orleans Saints wide receivers? Was it Michael Thomas? No, it was Chris Olave. He basically got knocked out cold. And so, but nobody's worrying about his career moving forward. He seems to be just fine. It's only Tua that this whole issue seems to be revolving around as far as permanent retirement. So I personally would love for Tua to have an amazing game today. I personally would love for him to just absolutely wreck the Steelers defense, which, by the way, it has not been the Steelers defense of old. Okay. It has not been something that is the vaunted Pittsburgh Steelers, the defense that we're used to from the likes of Mike Tomlin. And Brian Flores being there has not made that much of a difference. It really has not. I wish that I could have done my behind enemy lines yesterday, and I had some candidates to talk about. I just didn't have the time since I was coming back from a trip. And that's a little bit of a personal story, but I'm not going to share that right now. So with that all being said, I personally feel like that what the Miami Dolphins need to be doing for this game, I don't know. I see Cap for Life talking about an NBC interview with Tua. I did not see that interview. I did not know he did an interview. Supposedly Dolphins are doing damage control. Supposedly, I'm just going to have to watch that interview for myself, and I'll judge what it looks like to me. I personally, and we have Eric Whitaker. Is that how you say it?
Whitaker.
Okay, I apologize.
No, you're good.
So welcome to the show, and thank you, because I was starting to run out of things to say solo. So anyway, what are your thoughts on everything that's been going on for the Dolphins tonight? What are you going to be watching for the most?
I mean, aside from the obvious. Obviously, I'm going to be looking to see how Tua looks. I'm anxious to see, I guess, how the defense responds. Obviously, this is a Pittsburgh passing attack that's got a lot of good receiving options between Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and George Pickens. I do worry a little bit about that. I do think that this is a game that has the potential to be a barn burner if it's going to be close. But how can the answer be anything other than seeing what Tua does in his return to the field, really?
I mean, I struggle to find anything that's going to be more important right now for the Miami Dolphins. I mean, if Tua plays, and which let me rephrase that. If Tua plays well, then obviously we can probably hopefully move on from this whole thing. The narratives won't be quite as strong. I know that Stephen A. Smith, I'm sure, is fuming at the fact that Tua's come. Like, I saw that bit with Dan Orlovsky on First Take with Stephen A. And Stephen A. just kind of looks like this the whole way.
Yep.
Because it's like, okay, the Cowboys are what right now? They're 5-1 with Cooper Rush as their quarterback for the most part. Only Dak Prescott only came back earlier today. That was his first game back. So, like, who is more important to the team? It's obviously Tua. Like, I don't know how anybody can argue that the Cowboys needed Dak Prescott more than the Dolphins needed Tua at this point. So, yeah, this is kind of a big deal. And to say otherwise just says that once again, we are downplaying everything that Tua represents for this Miami Dolphins team. And I feel like at this point, watching what we see now, seeing what Teddy Bridgewater did, seeing what Skylar Thompson did. And again, I want to credit Skylar Thompson for the brief time he was on the field against the Vikings, but it's very plainly obvious this offense does not function nearly as smoothly without Tua. And so that's something that you have to take into account.
Yeah, and I want to address something because I do think that this is a fun thing to talk about. I do see a comment about Flores bringing insight about Tua or the Dolphins that gives the Steelers some sort of advantage. It's funny because what Flores brings to the table on defense is he's going to be uber aggressive. But I don't know if that's the right decision against Tua and this Dolphins offense, just because of the fact that throughout his career, Tua has really struggled when teams have dropped 8 against him, and he's had to hold the ball and kind of read the field. But when you're putting Tua in a decision where you're blitzing, you're sending extra guys, and he has to make quick decisions, that's when you really get hit, especially when you've got guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on the outsides that can take that slant 40, 50 yards when the linebackers are vacating their area to blitz. So, I honestly, from that perspective, I don't see Flores bringing anything that's going to be, I don't think he's got the recipe for Tua, because I know that that's kind of a question that a lot of people have on their minds, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah, and as far as and then MK Matt was asking, does Flores bring any insight about Tua? Like, what insight about Tua can he bring that they don't already know? Based on film, they already know that sometimes Tua likes to, when he's trying to improvise, he tries to hang on to the ball too long. So we already know that's the case. We've seen that on film. We don't need Flores to tell them that. Do we know that Tua sometimes struggles to make the decision to run when I feel like he should? That's just me. I personally that's my pet peeve with Tua at this point, is that he doesn't run when he should. That's something that Teddy Bridgewater was willing to do. That's something that Skylar Thompson was willing to do. I wish the Tua would be more willing to do it. Just run and then slide, because even that will take the defense on their heels a little bit. You're muted, by the way. I don't know if you know that, but okay. So it's just that I personally feel like there's nothing that Flores can really tell the Steelers that the Dolphins wouldn't already have shown with Tua as it is. And besides that, let's also take this into account. So even if Brian Flores was able to give some level of insight into Tua as a player, as an individual, as a person, I mean, that's great and all, but can Brian Flores give insight into the Mike McDaniel offense? Can he give insight into how McDaniel's going to call the plays? Can he give insight as to what kind of a strategy Mike McDaniel is going to offer for the likes of Tyreek Hill, which Brian Flores never had the honor of having? Like, granted, if Brian Flores, his real issue besides his ego was the fact that he never, ever was able to get any type of offensive coaching in there. No matter, it doesn't matter who he brought in there, whether it was Chad O'Shea, whether it was Chan Gailey, whether it was his army of offensive coordinators in year 3. Like, it was never, ever a good offense, ever.
Yep.
And once Mike McDaniel shows up, suddenly the offense looks good. You could argue most of that. You could even argue most of that is because of Tyreek Hill's presence alone. Obviously, Tyreek Hill being there makes a world of difference on this offense. And God forbid he ever end up getting out. But Mike McDaniel's play calls are so much more creative and innovative than anything that Brian Flores ever did while he was in Miami. So at that point, that the Mike McDaniel factor outweighs any kind of insight that Brian Flores could offer Mike Tomlin and the Steelers at this point.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where the Steelers defense to me doesn't feel like the Steelers defense of old. Obviously, TJ Watt being out, I think, is going to make a really big difference in this one. You kind of thought, oh, well, maybe the Steelers kind of have a feather in their cap after beating the Buccaneers, but I think we saw this Sunday that maybe beating the Buccaneers isn't quite the feat that maybe it looked like last week. So it's one of those things where I think that this Dolphins offense, if they do decide to go blitz heavy, it's going to look a lot more like what we saw from the Steelers defense against the Bills, because the Bills, obviously with their dynamic playmakers and Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs were able to get the ball down the field. And I think that the Dolphins will kind of be able to do that, as far as they go on offense. But, talking about the defense now, I don't know how much you've touched on the defense. Obviously, Kenny Pickett's going to be going today for Pittsburgh.
And honestly, I prefer that over Mitch Trubisky, to be perfectly honest, because a rookie quarterback is not going to be able to adapt as quickly as and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about my assessment of the situation because maybe I read it wrong because I don't watch the Steelers most of the time. But with that being said, did not Kenny Pickett end up getting benched for Mitch Trubisky earlier this season at one point? Because I know that they benched Trubisky for Pickett, but didn't it go the other way at one point this season already?
No, the only time that happened was the injury. Yeah.
Okay, so it was an injury. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fair. But still, like, the drop-off from Pickett to Trubisky was not that drastic from what I remember. So to act like Kenny Pickett is suddenly some world-beater quarterback, I just feel like that's overstating his case. He may be very talented. He could be really good in the future. But as for right now, I don't see him as this world beater kind of a threat. Not to the Dolphins. And think about this. The defense did a pretty darn good job. Against the Minnesota Vikings, which up until one point had been a fantastic offense this season. And they held them down for a good long time in that game.
Yeah.
Then things kind of spiraled out of control because once again the offense couldn't get anything going. So it always feels like one thing works and the other thing doesn't for the Dolphins. Right. It almost feels like if Tua ends up coming back and playing really well, suddenly the defense is going to fall off a cliff. I don't know. Maybe that's the Dolphins Indian burial ground curse. Who knows? But it's like we can't ever get both units working at once.
I do feel like there was something that we saw in that Vikings game a little bit. Obviously, the penalties need to be cleaned up. I think that was a big factor as to what killed them.
I was getting ready to get on my flight to Texas when I was in a sports bar preparing for getting ready to go to the airport. And I watched there was a Vikings fan right next to me watching that same sequence take place. And he turned to me and he said, y'all's offense is bailing us. The refs are bailing us out right now. Like, yeah, I noticed. It's like, yeah, I don't know how you can drive that far down the field and then basically end up farther back than when you started, when you gave up the ball. That was just wild, man.
Yeah, and so it did feel like there was something kind of building there, especially when I think the Vikings had I think it was 10 3-and-outs on Sunday against the Dolphins defense. Obviously, you don't want the back-breaking run by Dalvin Cook in the fourth quarter, but I think that was just that was a tall task to ask of the Dolphins defense, to keep stopping the Vikings. You get 10 3-and-outs, chances are you should win the game. I don't care who you're playing. But it does feel like the defensive line specifically, guys like Jalen Phillips are kind of on the precipice of kind of hitting that midseason stride like he did last year. I do wonder, is there a singular player that you're going to look at, if it looks like Emmanuel Locke was going to be out. Is there a singular player on the defensive line that you're going to look at to kind of step up and replace his production?
For Emmanuel Ogbah specifically? Yeah, it's probably going to have to be like a Jalen Phillips or somebody. Somebody's going to have to step up there because I'm sure that they're going to try to throw Andrew Van Ginkel in there to add some of that pass rushing. I'm sure Melvin Ingram is still going to get a bunch of snaps, which honestly, as good as he is, I really would prefer to keep him fresh for the postseason if at all possible, because I still think the Dolphins have the capability of making the playoffs. But it depends on how well Tua plays. But as far as defense specifically, Van Ginkel's going to have to play well. Christian Wilkins going to have to continue to play well. Raekwon Davis. I've kind of reached the point where quarterbacks in today's NFL have gotten so good at reading blitzes that unless you get right in their face, it's basically the defensive tackles that have to do the work, not the edge rushers that end up getting. I feel like we're going to soon reach an era, and maybe I'm wrong about my prediction because this is just how I tend to view it. Quarterbacks read edge rushers coming in so much quicker now than if a guy is like staring them in the face, because what's scarier, the big dude who's 350 pounds running towards you with his arms outstretched right in your face, or is it the guy that's coming around the edge but you can feel him coming and you know that you can step up into the pocket and escape if you have to? That's just my personal assessment. Now, if you have one edge rusher and one guy coming up from you in the first place and you don't give the quarterback any room to escape, well, then that's the ideal situation, right? But the Dolphins haven't been able to get that going so far. It's either one guy up the middle gets it, but there's room to run around the edge, or one of the edge guys gets in, but he can step up into the pocket because the defensive tackle can't get through. I don't know. I feel like the Miami Dolphins, they need to get everything going. And by the way, Dave Killingsworth, I am not trapped in a white room. I have a window here, and everything is wonderful. This is my room. I just am not one for aesthetics. That's all. It's no big deal. I do not need help. I am fine. I am not going to blink because I do not require assistance. Anyway, let's go ahead and get ready to wrap this whole thing up. Let's get our predictions for this game. Eric, we'll start with you. You know what? I'm going to hit you with this because I love to hit people with things they're not expecting because it's fun for me to watch the wheels turn. This is something that I do on Pulse of Fins Nation. I don't know if you watch it when I do it with Ron. I like to ask for a MVP player, an overrated player, and an underrated player. So who is the underrated player for the Dolphins? When I say underrated, I mean a guy that you figure is not going to do very much, but he ends up doing more than expected.
Give me Ben Stilley coming up off of the practice squad this week. I think he's gonna be in a couple plays. I loved watching him in the preseason, and I'm actually really excited for him to get called up from the practice squad.
Okay, that's a good one. That's actually a really good one. Yeah, Ben Stilley was called up to the active roster this week, so that's going to be an interesting thing. He could become another candidate for the Chris Greer Acorn hunts, so we'll see what happens on that one. All right, now who do you figure is going to be your overrated player, the guy that you figure is going to do a lot but is not end up doing very much?
I don't think this is a game where Raheem Mostert is going to particularly excel. I think if you're going to beat the Steelers, it's likely going to have to be through the air. You know, Mostert's played well the last few games. I don't know if he keeps up that same pace today.
All right. And who is your MVP of the game?
Oh, come on now. It's gotta be Tua. It's Tua.
Okay. So do you believe it, or do you think that's or do you think that needs to happen?
No. I firmly believe that. I really do believe that.
Okay. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to say that my underrated player will be actually Brandon Shell, because I personally feel like without TJ Watt in that lineup, he's going to have an opportunity to play better than what we would have expected of him. So that's going to help the Miami Dolphins a lot, and that's going to help Brandon Shell's PFF rankings later on down the line if you're someone who uses that sort of thing as a judgment. I think my overrated player is going to be, let's see. I'm actually going to go ahead and go with, you actually picked a good one. I personally, this is just a gut feeling. I don't think Raheem Mostert is going to be getting quite as much attention as we would like him to, but that doesn't mean that Chase Edmonds is suddenly going to become the star of the show either. Let's just get that clear right now. I feel like if anything, Myles Gaskin will get more of the call at that point, just because I said once that he was a rash that you couldn't get rid of. It's like he keeps coming back, and Chase Edmonds keeps dropping passes, so you really have no justification for throwing Edmonds in there. I know that he's going to still get the first looks when it comes to moving Mostert out of the way, but I personally just don't think Edmonds is going to be doing very much for the Dolphins in this. I think they may actually use him as a payroll casualty next season.
Yeah.
My MVP, Honestly, I'm not going to say that Tua doesn't play well, but I'm going to say that Tyreek Hill is going to be a big deal for why that is, because again, I feel like I pick Tyreek Hill every single week, but there's a justified reason for that. Tyreek Hill is like, if you want to say that Tua is the engine, Tyreek is the exhaust pipe that just shows just how powerful, because you can hear it go. Rrrr! He's the reason that the offense moves as fast as it does. Tua is the one who facilitates everything, but the shiny toy is the one that shows you just how dangerous it can be. That's Tyreek. So I'm going to pick him for the MVP.
I was thinking about it, and while he probably won't get a lot of love for the MVP, I could see Tyreek Hill, especially this year, having a really good inside track at the offensive player of the year early on.
No, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I really would not. Javon says Tyreek is the fuel. Yeah, I like that better. Yep. I like that a lot better than what I came up with. Listen, I try to be clever. I really do. It doesn't always work out that way because my turns of phrase don't always go the way I want them to. So I like that, Javon. Thank you very much. Yes, Tyreek Hill is the fuel that runs the engine. So in any case, now let's go ahead and give our game predictions. How do you figure this is all going to go down, Eric?
This is going to be the best primetime game we've seen since Monday night against the Patriots, the Jay Cutler game. We're going to have it. I'm really bullish on this one. Give me Dolphins 34, Steelers 14.
No, that's very, very bullish. Are you predicting Are you predicting a defensive touchdown, or is Tua just going to unleash hell on the Steelers that badly?
From what I've seen so far, Kenny Pickett, he does kind of throw the ball up. I could see maybe one defensive touchdown in there.
Okay. I am not quite as bullish just because I feel like the Dolphins still need to get their feet back up from under them after getting wrecked the last 3 games. Because let's be real, after the Bengals game, the Dolphins kind of just feel like a team that's missing the engine. So now I feel like they will win this game. I feel like that maybe I'm willing to go up to 24-14, not 34. I'll go 24-14 for the Dolphins, just because I feel like Tua may need to get his sea legs back under him, if you will, try to get everything back in order. But once he finds his rhythm again, yeah, I feel like they'll be able to pull away at the end of the game. So that's my prediction.
Am I now I know you never want to see a quarterback get hit, but am I wrong for wanting to get that out of the way early?
Part of me, are you assuming
I just want to see him take
you want to see him
get back up, boom, he's good.
Well, ideally I wouldn't want to see him get a brutal hit at all.
No, just a normal, just get tackled one time, whether it's on the run or what have you, just take a normal hit, get back up, just to get over that mental hurdle that might be there.
I want to see his jersey get tugged at the front and then get roughing the passer called on him like Trevor Lawrence did earlier. That's what I want to see. Oh my God, yeah. Like the roughing the passer. What did you do? I just tugged on his jersey, man. I don't know what to tug him about. It's like, you're not supposed to do that. He's a quarterback. But also, but is that Tua? Wait, it's Tua? Oh, never mind. I take that plight back. Thank you very much. Whatever. I don't care about. I understand what you're saying. Part of me kind of wants that too, just to like, okay, he's okay, he's fine, we can kind of breathe again. He'll take hits, but I get it. I just personally, I would like to see him not get hit for once. That's what I would like to see. Just once.
That's the ideal.
Just once, I would like to see him not have to hit the turf and have to get on his knees and get back up. Like, that's what I would like to see just one time. But wishful thinking, this Miami Dolphins offensive line. Anyway. That's going to be it from us here at Yard Prep. By the way, for anybody who still hasn't gotten onto their prize picks yet, I know that there is a Miami Dolphins versus Pittsburgh Steelers Sunday Night Football Dolphins on 5 that came out 2 days ago on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. You can go check that out right now. And I'm sure that David Eversole and, of course, our good friend over there, he's the main guy over there. Alfredo Arteaga, 3 yards per carry. He's the man. So make sure that you're checking that out to see what kind of picks you should make for Sunday Night Football. And again, once again, just to mention it, PrizePicks.com. That is a revolutionary fantasy platform. You can pick up to 5 different players across leagues to go ahead and see if you can win some big time monies. That's always important to do. Again, the promo code is 5. That's FIVE, prizepicks.com. I personally am going to be, because I went ahead and I went and looked at everything also, Eric, and I saw that we had receptions. I went ahead and I'm going to pick the over on Tyreek Hill catching over 6.5 receptions. That means he has to catch at least 7 for the past. Like he's gone over that number for the past 3 games. Like against, just think about that. September 29th, he got 10 against the Bengals. He got 8 against the Jets. He got 12 against the Vikings. And Prize Picks is only putting him at 6.5. If I were anybody out there who's listening right now, I would absolutely go ahead and pick Tyreek Hill's over on that, because that just seems like a gimme. They're going to be targeting him a lot as always. So that's going to be one easy one for you. Another one that you can take a look at is passing yards. One of the things there is Kenny Pickett going to go over 220 passing yards? So that's an interesting one, something to think about. I also see Justin Fields on here going over 160 yards passing against the New England Patriots. That's something you might want to look into. So with all that said and done, thank you all so much for joining us. There is still time for you to get on Prize Picks if you have not yet. The game starts, I believe, at 8:20. So just make sure you are tuned in, and we will see who sees you at post game. I don't know if I'm going to be awake by then, because I got to be up at 5 in the morning tomorrow. Ooh. So we'll go to work. So yeah, I don't see myself doing post game at midnight and then getting 4 hours of sleep and going to work from that.
I'll tell you what, though, if it's 34-14, you might be here.
I mean, that would mean the game went really, really fast. But I'd be up for it by then. I probably am good. I probably go as far as 10:30, and after that, I'm just like, nope, I'm done. Thank you very much. But anyway, we will see you all. Let's see what happens in this game. Dolphins throwback jerseys tonight. That should be fun. So let's see if Tua can get some revenge on the head coach to try to sabotage him. Anyway, thank you all for joining us. Manny, take us out of here.